Sophia Media. This is my first year as a mother, a podcast about life, motherhood, and that pivotal first year of becoming a mom. I'm Sophia.
I'm Samira.
And I'm Casey.
Each episode, we speak with a mother who shares her own experience about this transformative time. For our first episode, we thought we'd have a conversation with our co-host, Georgi, who's also a new mom. Welcome, Casey.
Hey, Casey. We're so happy that you're here.
Thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Now, Casey, we've known each other for a long time, ever since we were first getting started in podcasting. And, we often have these check-ins on life, on work. And over the course of the last 2 years, I would say, I followed from afar your pregnancy journey and that first year journey as a new mom. But even so, I've learned so much more about your experience as a new mom in our interview with you.
Yeah, it was really interesting being on the other side of the mic because I've been producing for 7 years, as you know, and to be interviewed is a totally different experience, especially being interviewed about something so new and so vulnerable. And this interview was so helpful for me to open up about things that I haven't talked to other people about or said out loud. There are celebrations, there were joyful moments and continue to be, but there are hard things that I have to grapple with too, and things that I'm still struggling with. So I hope that the conversation is helpful for people who are listening.
Yeah, absolutely. This is exactly the point of the show, to have deeply personal conversations with moms about their journey into motherhood and to explore all of the ups and downs of that experience. Because we want to explore how becoming a mom impacts a woman's sense of self, and also how it impacts her relationship with her partner and others in her family. Over the course of this season, Casey and I will talk to moms of all different ages, from all walks of life, navigating different situations and reflecting on this transformative time.
Sophia, I'm so excited to get into these conversations with you.
But for now, though, we'll kick off with Casey's own journey of navigating new motherhood.
I didn't think I had the maternal gene. I truly thought that there was just something missing because I wasn't reacting to babies. I didn't buy the baby clothes. I didn't dream of having babies. I didn't play house. So I was really surprised that once it was happening for me, I was like, oh, I am maternal and it's all happening. Like it just kicked in and then it felt great.
Can you talk about a little bit about this decision to expand your family, to grow your family? What made it the right time for you?
Yeah, I never really planned on necessarily getting married and having a family and having kids. I'm not a very conventional person by any means, like not very traditional, but I realize, hey, like I'm in the healthiest relationship of my life. I'm about to settle down with this person I deeply love. We have a foundation of trust and, mutual respect and adoration. And so the idea of having a kid suddenly seemed really appealing to me. And something else that made our journey kind of complicated was that we knew from the get-go that if we decided to have a child, we would do IVF. And that's a very tedious process. It takes a long time. And for us, it took several years. And so right around my 33rd birthday, I decided, okay, if we're going to do this, we're about to get married. We got the house. I think we should start this process now.
And what was the reason for IVF being the only viable path? Are you comfortable talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, of course, because it's a little unusual. My husband has this very rare genetic bone disease called osteogenesis imperfecta. And it basically is a brittle bone disease. So you have chronic pain, you have very delicate bones, you get injured very easily. And growing up, my husband and brother, who also has it, were constantly in braces, in casts. You can see pictures of them. They have both broken legs. And these were kids who were not very active. You know, his mom was very cautious about keeping them safe on the playground because she also has OI. The chances of passing it down to your offspring is 50-50. And so we decided this is not something we want to pass on. We just knew that if we had a choice to give our child a better life, that we would. And essentially, they make a probe that is able to detect in the embryo if there's OI present on the gene. And through that process, they were able to tell us which ones were affected and which ones weren't. But that takes a long time.
So, given that it would be a long and probably difficult process, how did you feel going into it?
I will say in the beginning, I was really reluctant to do IVF. I am not someone who has the courage to go through very invasive medical procedures. I am someone who has fainted when I get my blood drawn. I can't donate blood. I have really low blood pressure. I barely spent any time in hospitals as a kid, whereas my husband was cycling in and out of them all the time. So the idea of being pumped with hormones, being around needles constantly, having to get my blood drawn several times a week, and having vaginal ultrasounds. Like, I don't like any of my pap smear. It was all the things that I really, really did not like or want. And that would be part of the process for months. And I understood that. You know, I spoke to other women who had gone through this process. I, consulted with the fertility clinic, and they broke it down for me like, this is what it looks like. And I was like, could we roll the dice? Like, I really had a moment where I was like, maybe they won't have it. And then also selfishly, I was like, well, if our kid does, look at you. You have like a really full, wonderful life. And your mom gave you a very full, wonderful life. Like, we are good people and good parents. Like, I think we can rise to the occasion. Like, we can do this. And then I realized, I would feel really guilty for the rest of my life if we didn't do this process and our child had it and they were in chronic pain and there's no treatment for it. So I measured that. I weighed that with, do I go through some needles and hormones for a few months of my life? Or do I give my child a lifetime of pain? Perhaps. And that just seemed like an obvious decision.
I was wondering if you had expectations of what it would look like to be a mom.
Yeah, it was hard to imagine. And I'll be honest and say that I didn't have a very close relationship with my mom. She wasn't a very maternal person. And I think that played a role in how I felt about becoming a parent myself and being maternal. I didn't think about having kids. I'll be honest. I didn't really enjoy babysitting. I had never held a baby or changed a diaper in my life prior to having a child. I love kids. I love teaching. But I was like, when they start to develop ideas about the world and they're funny and they're running around, that's like what I want to do. But in terms of like breastfeeding and changing diapers and like holding a baby, it was completely foreign to me. And so it felt like I was on this journey. Like someone just put me on a roller coaster and I was like, okay, here we go. Let's see what happens. I will also say, whatever cocktail of hormones that I developed, I became like a very chill person. Like, I was not a chill person prior to pregnancy. And most people get more or less chill. I was like zen, like something clicked and I was like, I gotta be calm for this baby. Like, I need to be chill. I need to go with the flow. So even when we went to the hospital tours and they're telling me all the scary stuff that could happen and they're pointing out the needles and the epidural and the triage, I'm like, it's gonna be okay. Like, my body knows what to do. So I wasn't even picturing any of this stuff. I was like, we'll get there when we get there, which is so uncharacteristic of me as someone who's like anxious, thinking about the future. I have my calendar open on the month view because I have to see that far into the future. Like, I have to see everything. And so like even thinking just a month out about the labor, about breastfeeding, I was like, yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we reach it. I took the classes and I studied and I read the books, but it was so hard to picture and imagine that moment because it had never happened to me, nothing even remotely close. And I was like, I'll just wait till it gets here and then we'll figure it out.
Well, when your daughter Violet did get here, what was that like? Can you take us through your birth experience?
Yeah. Unfortunately, by 37 weeks and like 5 days, I developed a complication called cholestasis. It's also super rare, but apparently I had all the markers. I had undergone IVF. I was over 35, and it was my first child. Apparently, a lot of those factors can play into this super rare complication, which causes full body itching. I do not wish this on anybody. It is awful. So I was losing a lot of sleep because I was scratching myself so much. It was honestly torture. And there isn't really treatment for it except labor. They were like, evicting the baby, getting the baby out is the only thing that will cure this. And I was like, well, I'm not even at 38 weeks, which technically is full term and totally safe. But I was like, I feel like we're not ready yet, but this is not sustainable. And we went to the doctor, and that day I had not brushed my teeth, didn't feed the cats. I was wearing my pajamas, and they were like, you have this, you cannot leave the hospital, and we're going to induce, because there is a small percentage of a stillbirth if we don't move forward with this. And they were like, and your quality of life right now is no good. So I was induced, and it took 3 days. They did a Foley bulb. They gave me Pitocin. I had a nitrous to help with the pain. I eventually got an epidural. They broke my water. And I did push for 3 hours, hoping for a vaginal birth. And her heart rate was elevated at that point. It was reaching tachycardia levels. And they were like, listen, we could tell you to push a little more, but I was at 10 centimeters. There was no movement. Like, she just was not moving anymore. And so the discussion of a C-section came up, and I was really disappointed. After 3 days and getting so far and finally getting 10 centimeters dilated, I thought this was going to happen for me. And I cried and was pretty disappointed, but they wheeled me into the operating room. I had a doula with me. And so after 3 days of this exhaustion, also once you have an epidural, you can't eat solid food. So I was very sleep deprived and also very hungry. I was very fatigued, like very weak at this point. And so I'm like, I have to get through this. This is like the final hurdle, the final hill. And they give you some really heavy stuff because you really don't feel anything. You feel some tugging and some movement, but you know what's going on, but I tried not to think about it. And they did tell me, within the first 10 minutes, the baby is out, which is super exciting. But then it takes another 45 minutes to sew you back up. So you're in there for an hour, which is kind of a bummer.
So when did you actually get to meet your daughter, Violet, for the first time?
So they're cutting me open, and my husband is right by me, and I hear them talking, and then they're like, we found her, we got her, and they're pulling her out. And you see in movies, this moment, it's like a pin drop of like, are we going to hear the baby? Like, if we hear the baby, everything's going to be okay. You're like wanting to hear that scream, to just know that everything is all right. And especially after this multi-day process and her heart rate, I was really concerned. And I was like, is everything going to be okay? And they take her out, and she makes this, it's not this scream cry like, hello world. The first thing that came to mind was like, it sounded like a cat meow. And maybe that's because I'm a cat parent. I have 2 cats, but it was like the closest thing to this little like, ah. And I'm looking into my husband's eyes, and we just break down, and we are just thrilled and relieved that everything is okay and we can hear her. And that's when it really hit that she's in the world now. She's here. She's a person. She's out. And then they bring her over to me. And I was also sad about having a C-section because, you're under so many drugs. You really are not very strong. You can't hold the baby. So they kind of carry her over to your head while you're strapped down, and they show you like, here's your baby. And I was like, hi. But then they, it's kind of short-lived, and then they cart her away, and then you have to lay there and they sew you up, and you're there for 45 minutes. But I was distracted at this point. And my husband could hear the nurses saying like, oh my gosh, this is a cute baby. This is a really cute baby. And, we were so excited. And I think at that point, just everything Changed.
Given that you had to recover from the C-section, when was the first moment that you were actually able to hold Violet in your arms?
Yeah, that is really hard because you're very dependent those first few weeks. I couldn't really shower on my own. I couldn't really walk on my own. But I was breastfeeding, so I could hold Violet, but I was laying down or sitting up. I couldn't walk around with her. And I think it took me almost a month before and either of us felt comfortable with me holding her and walking down the stairs. Like that just didn't seem like a smart idea.
Mm-hmm.
So I was still able to hold her and have her close to me and have some of that skin to skin contact. But it was hard. I remember a few times like I'd be breastfeeding her and either I would have a cough or a sneeze or I'd be laughing and the pain in your abdomen is excruciating. And there was a time where I started to cough while I was holding her and she was nursing and I just was screaming and sobbing and telling my husband, please, you need to take her. I'm going to drop her because I'm in so much agony. Like I don't have the strength to hold her. And getting out of bed too. Like I couldn't get myself out of bed. Like because you're using so much abdominal strength. So just sitting up and laying down where, you needed someone there. But yeah, it took maybe about 3-4 weeks until I could really independently hold her and be standing and sit up and lay down or sit in the nursing chair on my own.
Mm-hmm. Did the moments of having skin-on-skin contact bring back that connection, that physical connection that you feel to the baby?
Yeah, there is something so special about holding her skin to skin, and especially breastfeeding, at least for me, for my journey. I believe it's oxytocin that's released when you are breastfeeding. And I felt euphoric. Like it really was like the natural drug that I felt when I was holding her close to me. Like people get natural highs from exercising, from running, from, sex. And it was so powerful being able to hold her close to me and do that breastfeeding and feeling just like this is the best feeling I could feel.
So it sounds like the breastfeeding and holding her close was maybe a high. Like what were some of the things that you were sort of struggling with or navigating in the first month as a mom?
Yeah. So in the last, I want to say, couple of decades, there's this new sort of, I don't want to say requirement, but strongly suggested idea that you feed your child every 2 to 3 hours, like when they're a baby. So that means that you have to wake up in the middle of the night and do these night feeds or vampire feeds, I think people lovingly call them. And it's wild because your baby is tired and wants to sleep all the time, and you have to wake them up. Because, of course, the practice was very different in the 90s. It was like, sleep, let the baby sleep. Do not wake the baby. And now they're telling us, wake the baby. The baby needs to be fed. And so I remember setting my alarm for 2, for 4, for 6. And, I had the surgery. So me and my husband were both on duty. Like he would go get her and bring her to my boob. And, I would just be nodding off with her on my boob. Like I was like, oh my gosh. And not only that, she would just be asleep. She would get on the nipple and start to fall asleep. And we'd have to wake her up and be like, no, 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 you need to drink. And so my husband, it was so heartbreaking because he would kind of like, just gently wake her up. He'd try to tickle her. He would take a washcloth, like a wet washcloth, and do it. And she would start crying. And we're like, you need to wake up and eat. And it just felt like you're torturing this poor thing. But you want your baby to gain weight in the first few weeks of their life. And so they need to eat and they need to be nourished. And this has proven to have like really high success rates for weight gain and for brain development. And this is just what is strongly recommended. So doing that felt wild in so many ways of just like having to wake up so much and wake up this baby and do this. And we were so excited. Once she got to the target weight, they were like, yeah, you could wait like 4 hours. We're like, oh, we could sleep for 4 hours in a row. Like, how exciting is that? So that was a really hard time.
I mean, it does feel like you are navigating like a new reality and a new identity, and one where you are using your body to sustain life for your kid. Can you talk a little bit about that adjustment of your own self and how you're looking at this new role?
Being a mother, you're just constantly transforming. there's things that are happening and they're changing and you have to adapt, and your baby's changing and you have to adapt to that. So like your role as a person kind of shifts a little bit, and how you feel about it changes. I'm talking about my wonderful, magical experience with breastfeeding, but actually, as I was telling you about these night feeds, and not only just waking up every 2 hours, but like they're just a bowl of mashed potatoes at that point. They can't do anything. And they're just hungry and tired and poop. And there were definitely a lot of moments where I was like, I just feel like a cow. Like, I just feel like I'm being used. Like, I'm tired. I don't want something on me right now. And in the beginning, I just like dreaded it. I was like, didn't she just eat? Like, it was like an hour and a half passed and that felt like nothing. It was like a blink of an eye. And I just felt like, this isn't my body anymore. This is like our body. This is her food source. And then a cat would jump on me and I'd be like, get off of me. Like, I just don't want to deal with this. Like, my body needs space. My husband would hug me and I'd be like, get away. Like, because there was this little creature feeding off of me every few hours, there was this term touched out where you physically just need your space and you just feel like exhausted from the constant contact. And of course, with my baby, I was like, she needs to be nourished. But like anything after that, I was like, this is just extra. And so that was really hard because I would get sad. I'd be like, I'm just a cow. I'm just here to provide the milk, and it's hard in those first few months because they're not doing anything yet. And so it's not as rewarding. It's just this give relationship, this one-sided relationship.
Is touched out a specific term?
It is, yes.
Okay. First
it
time
is.
I'm hearing.
I know. It's really interesting. My therapist actually told me about it because she's a mom and she's just kind of all about having clients who are new moms. And I was describing this to her. I was like, is this bad? Like, I don't want my husband to hug me. Like, my cats sit on me and it drives me crazy. And she's like, oh yeah, touched out. That's like, because your body's going through so many physical changes. And after pregnancy, you're like, enough. I need my personal space. And I'm sure that's not everyone's experience, but it is a common term that kind of circles the community.
Did you have time to look in the mirror, like any kind of self-care routine? Was there any time for that?
Every once in a while I take a shower and they say it's like the best shower of your life. And I will say, like, I did really enjoy showering because, this baby's spitting up on you and they're feeding on you and, there's milk spilling and you just kind of feel gross all the time. So having a shower was very special. And as soon as I was given the green light to walk again and like be independent, I immediately started moving my body because I needed to do that. So the first thing I did was like put her in a stroller and walk in the park, just like when I used to take those solo walks. It was like week 3 or 4 and I was out there every single day with her. And she was born in March. So this was like the tail end of winter and I'd just bundle myself up and go for like an hour. And that was amazing.
Because you were talking about being so calm in the pregnancy phase. Do you think that carried over into those like first few months, or how did it feel for you as a mom?
It did carry over, fortunately. Sometimes when I'm out with other moms and their babies, I'm like, am I too chill? Like, is this dangerous chill? Like, should I be more neurotic about this? I thought I was going to be really like anxious and worried about every little thing. And for some reason, that's not the case. I don't know what happened or why. When my in-laws came to visit us when she was born, they stayed with us for, I think, 2 weeks to kind of just help. They do food prep and they're cleaning and kind of assisting. And especially with my surgery, we just needed all hands on deck. And my husband's mom was like, you guys are really chill. Like, I didn't expect that. You're very calm. Like, I thought this was going to be absolute chaos. And I was like, is that okay? Because you're also just worried all the time that people are judging you and your parenting. Like, what are they going to think? Am I bad? Like, oh, should I care more about the temperature in her crib? Should I care more about, if that feed wasn't long enough, and you kind of just follow the baby's cues. And Violet also happens to be a very chill baby. So I feel very relaxed in some ways. And I'm sure that'll change when she becomes a toddler and a teenager.
Maybe it's almost by design, like you have to sort of adapt. Like when the baby's crying even, for me, it's like hiking up my blood pressure, but it's just something when it's your own baby, maybe it's something that feels like, oh, I'm just going to take things down a notch and be the example
Yeah.
for this young human.
That is exactly it. I think one of the best things that I've learned about being a mom and being around Violet is that it has made me so calm because when I'm around her, I'm so self-aware of what energy I'm exuding and reflecting back to her. And so before I was pregnant, I was a very high strung, very anxious person. And I just knew like, I don't want her to see me. And of course, she's going to see me in those moments and she should see those moments. But there are so many times where, like, right before I walk into her room in the morning, I take a really big, deep breath, exhale, and then I enter the room with so much calm because I just want her to just see, like, oh, there's mom. Like, it's all good, you know? And sometimes she's not and she's crying. And I don't want to be like, oh, why are you crying? Oh, this is so stressful. Because like that doesn't calm anybody down. And that probably would have been me, if I was, in my 20s and early 30s. And now I'm like, it's all good. We're relaxed. I'm definitely one of those parents that like when she falls, I don't make a big scene out of it. I'm like, you're good, and she'll cry and I pick her up. I'm like, we're fine. We're good. Let's try again. Yeah. Because I want to reflect that back to her. And because that wasn't shown to me, it was very stressful growing up with a parent that was pretty anxious.
I'm also curious because you did say that your mom maybe didn't have some of the maternal instincts that you felt strongly once you got pregnant. In terms of parenting, did you do some reading on how to parent? Or was that something that just came to you with all the hormonal and emotional, physical changes that came along with motherhood?
Yeah, I'll definitely shout out hormones for getting me this far. But yes, a very important book for me was Hunt, Gather, Parent by Micheline Duclef. And basically the premise is that she has this toddler that's very poorly behaved. She has these tantrums. She says no a lot. She doesn't want to do anything. And Micheline is a journalist and she's like, what is going on? And she has a bit of a temper. She admits it. She's, everything escalates. Like they're mirroring back, like back and forth. Like she's having a meltdown and she's kind of yelling at her. And it's this cycle. It's this echo chamber of just like chaos. And on one of her reporting trips, she observes in other cultures this completely different way of parenting where she sees these toddlers the same age as her daughter and they're helping out. They're not having tantrums. They're part of the community. They're doing work, for lack of a better word, like behaving and being just like little adults, basically. And she's like, what is going on here? Like, what am I doing wrong? Like, what can I do? And so she brings her daughter and is living amongst these communities. And she realizes like the intergenerational exposure, having multiple people like grandparents and bigger families, aunts, uncles, cousins, and being around other kids is helpful. Normalizing helping out and, doing chores and not making it like something that you have to do when you're a teenager and you get paid, an allowance for it. Just being like, yeah, you want to help me cook? Let's do it. Because we're so quick to be like, get away from the knife. Let me do it. Go away, go play with your toys. And in Western culture too, just making everything about the kid and making about play. And the fact that, one or two parents are on top of one kid all the time and kind of being this helicopter parent is sort of working against the child's growth and development and from being independent. And I was so moved by this book. I mean, while we don't have as much family locally in Pittsburgh, I try to make sure that Violet has a lot of independent play. I'm not taking her to Chuck E. Cheese every day and doing these child-centric things. If anything, whatever I do, I take her with me. We're going to the grocery store, I cook and I bring her in the kitchen with me and I give her a ladle. And while she's not cooking yet, in a few years, I want her to make a soup with me. And like, she knows a ladle, she knows her way around a whisk. You don't have to completely change your life and make it completely centered on your child and child fun. You can continue your life as normal with your kid coming along for the ride, and it can be just as fun and enriching, and you don't have to change everything. And that seems so important to me.
Mm-hmm. And I'm also wondering, once you became mobile, you were able to get up and walk around. Did you change the way you showed up in the world?
Yeah, I feel like in some ways this is a wild comparison, but how like maybe some people felt in the pandemic where maybe you didn't leave your house for a long time and then you would step outside or get into a car, I remember this feeling of being like, whoa, like I'm outside or I'm in a car. Like, cause there would be weeks where there was lockdown and we didn't leave the house. And so leaving the house and going out felt wild. And the same kind of thing happened in the first few months of having Violet, where I feel like me and my husband didn't talk to any other people besides each other. Like we were just the three of us in the house all the time. And we actually got along surprisingly. You think you'd really get on each other's nerves. But then if we had, some people over or I left the house and interacted with somebody on the street, it felt like, wow, I just talked to another person. Like, look at that. Look at me. And it took me about 4 months to join. There's this moms group that meets every week that my doula ran. And every week it felt like I was like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And then finally I was like, I need to get out of the house and I need to talk to other moms because I wasn't really around other moms. And so that can be very isolating. So I went to this group and basically, we sit in a circle, we bring our babies and we just talk about the week or talk about whatever is going on in our lives. And guaranteed at least one person is crying. It's a very emotional but safe space. There's coffee and snacks. And I brought Violet and I remember looking around the room and just thinking like, oh my God, look at all these new faces. There's all these new people. There's all these babies. I'm a mom. I'm in a mom's group. And it felt great to get out. It really did. I needed that. I needed to socialize. Like I started to feel normal again.
How do you think finding community helped you navigate this new identity?
Oh, I mean, it was great because we would just go around and everyone would talk about their experiences. Every single thing that everyone said, I felt like I was nodding and I was like, I can relate. And then you would look around and other people were nodding and you did not feel alone. And then being able to myself express how I was feeling, what I was struggling with, and to say it out loud also took away some of that power for things that I was struggling with, like maybe feeling like I'm just a cow or not getting out of the house enough or having a C-section and feeling like that was some sort of failure. And then having other people just kind of pipe in and be like, just so you know, like you're not a failure. Or I too feel like depressed and sad and need to go out. Like, do you want to go for a walk? I was very diligent in attending that group every week for like 4 or 5 weeks until Violet kind of aged out of it. But I looked forward to that every week because that was like the community that I needed.
Mm-hmm. What were some of the things that really stood out? Like, as you were saying, things that other people in that group said out loud that you were like, oh yeah, I was feeling the same, but I didn't know how to put it in words or I didn't have a chance to express that to anyone. And I'm so glad that I'm not alone in experiencing that.
Yeah, a big thing with becoming a mom was sort of my career and identity because I was someone who really, and I continue to put a lot of emphasis on my career as something that career and success equal like my identity and who I am, which I'm still trying to untether and not put so much pressure on myself to feel like what I do is who I am. And I also knew going into parenthood that I didn't want mom to be my only identity. I didn't want that to erase other things that I was interested in. And being there and hearing some moms go around and, some moms are saying, this is everything I ever wanted. I'm a mom. This is great. And then I would hear someone say, I didn't think I'd ever be a mom. And I love it and I'm happy, but my husband goes to work, he goes to an office, he sees people, he's doing what he loves, and I'm home all day with the kid. And it is hard and it is isolating and I miss my job and I'm mourning that part of me. And actually, some of the moms made a book club and there's a few books out there. I think it's Mother Artist, all these other books that are coming out now about how, there is this loss of identity or feeling like your partner maybe gets to continue their life and continue their career and be successful. And some people, whether they have that choice or not, may have to leave their career or, put it on pause to be the main caretaker. And that's asking a lot. So I was conflicted. I was a full-time stay-at-home mom for like the first 10, 11 months of Violet's life. And I had no idea what it was like to sit at home all day and be inside and take care of this little creature. And hearing that from other moms was such a relief to me because, again, I felt bad. I felt like I shouldn't feel this way. I'm a mom moms should all love being moms all the time. I should want to be here all the time. This should be the best time of my life. I should be happy and grateful. And who needs a job? I don't need to work, but that's not how I felt. I was like, I want to return to work. I do. I miss work part-time, this is great, but I can't do it full-time. And so hearing that from other moms was just such a relief, because then I didn't feel as judged. I didn't feel like this is a solo, unique experience that I was having.
I'm curious if your relationship with your own mom has changed at all. And becoming a mom, does that give you more insight into what she must have gone through?
Well, me and my mom, of course, had very different experiences. Unfortunately, my dad passed away shortly after my first birthday. So she became a single parent pretty quickly and had a really hard time because she didn't have the support. In my case, obviously, that's not what happened. I have the support. I have my husband, and things are very different. But unfortunately, my mom's not very involved. She came to visit Violet once, which was actually a big surprise. She's a little bit older. It's hard for her to travel these days. So she did come to visit, I think, about a month after she was born. But when she was here, she didn't help. She didn't change a diaper. She was a very anxious person. So when the baby cried, it made her cry. It made her upset. And so it felt like we were taking care of two babies. So actually having her here was more stressful than just having a baby and it being the three of us. I also expected a lot of things to change about our relationship. And in some ways, I was like, oh, maybe I can really be more compassionate and understand where my mom was coming from, raising a child on her own. Like, that must have been really hard. But in some ways, in the way I was raised and some of the things I went through, I also have less acceptance. Because some of the things I'm like, I wouldn't have done that with Violet, whether my husband was here or not. There's just some rules I would have set, some things that I would have cared about. And, it was on the verge of neglect. And it's hard now for me to understand and forgive her and have compassion. Because if anything, now that I am a mom, I'm actually more frustrated with it and less patient.
Thanks for sharing something that's so personal. Was there anything surprising about how your relationships changed?
Yeah. Something that, I continue to struggle with is my relationship with my husband. We are still deeply in love and respect each other and are very happy and love being a parent to Violet together. But our relationship has changed in that there is a loss of intimacy there. And, I'm reading in the books and going on the blogs and going on mom Reddit, and people are all over the place. Some people are like, I want to have a baby again. And like, I feel really sexy and we're having sex all the time. And I'm like, really? Because that isn't our experience. I did not want to have sex and continue to have very little interest. My libido has completely gone down, especially I think this started around IVF because I was being stabbed with needles and hormones, getting bloated. I had no desire to be intimate. And that going back to the touched out feeling, it kind of started around that time. My husband had to do the needles for me because I just, the idea of injecting myself with a needle, I couldn't do it. And it's like in your stomach. So he would do it for me. That isn't sexy. Getting bloated and feeling kind of full and, having all these hormonal feelings, it didn't work for me. And then being pregnant, while I felt good in some ways and felt really healthy and strong and powerful that I was growing this thing inside of me, I didn't feel beautiful. I didn't feel sexy. I didn't feel desirable. And my husband was really kind and very loving and nurturing. But that's just how I felt in my body and in my mind. And so I had no interest in sex. And then after giving birth, of course, I had this major abdominal surgery and I'm recovering from that. I'm not feeling up for anything physical, of course. And, a year later, I still am struggling with it. And I did not expect this was something that would continue. I thought maybe after pregnancy, finally, I would feel the spark and feel like I want to reconnect with my husband physically. And that's not the case. And having a child too has changed that. I think becoming mom, unfortunately, makes me not feel sexy. That is sort of a loss of identity that I'm mourning for myself. And, not feeling sexy, not feeling desirable, not feeling attracted to my partner at this time is really hard to reckon with. I thought for sure it would come back, but it hasn't. I put so much energy to taking care of a little person. So I don't know how people have the energy at the end of the day to be physical and want to do that stuff. But yeah, it's hard. And in my meeting, I brought that up. I felt very exposed, very vulnerable. And I just said, I don't have sex with my husband. Is anyone else feeling this way? And, some people were like, yeah, it took me a while. And then we got into a routine. They were like, it might not be sexy, but maybe schedule it once a week, and it wasn't super hopeful or helpful, but I know I'm not alone and people could relate to that.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if there could be a separation in terms of the physical need for sexual intimacy and the emotional intimacy, or is that closely related? Or are there other ways that you're going about it to compensate for that?
My therapist actually said, there's other ways than physically connecting to still be intimate. And there's other things that are not sex too. I make sure to hug my husband every day. When we're watching a movie or TV or something, when we get a chance to do that, I snuggle up to him. I cuddle up to him. I think intellectually too, we have a lot of conversations like over lunch about things. And I try to listen very deeply and be very intentional about the things that he's talking about because he really loves like explaining things and he's very curious. And we always say, I love you, every day, multiple times, in a way that feels very important. So when I had this conversation with him and asked him and checked in and I was like, okay, this is something that we don't have going on right now. Like, how are you feeling? Like, it feels very mutual that we're like, it's okay that this is not happening. Nobody feels like they're being neglected, that this is really hard and we're really struggling. Like, I think we have the foundation everywhere else in that, like, we're doing the things as a couple. We're also raising a child and we feel like we're doing a really good job. We have fun together. There are ways that I do think we're both feeling very fulfilled where sex isn't something that we necessarily miss right now.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, because you were mentioning your mom earlier, how you felt a little bit disappointed with how she showed up. I guess, what are ways that your husband has shown up for you?
Yeah, being very intentional with how he listens to me, making sure that he knows that I'm loved all the time. I feel very, very seen. I feel very heard. And that's something that I did not feel from my parent, from my family of origin. He shows up for me every day and he makes sure that I feel loved. He says, I love you. He hugs me back harder. He will find ways to make things feel very, very special. I'm working on like a creative project and he said, I'm so glad you're following your dreams, that's so great. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if it's my dreams, but like, that's so sweet, like, and, or we'll spend time with friends and he's just like, you're so funny, and I don't get sick of that ever. Like, I know it's very genuine and it feels really good. And also he gives me a lot of independent time too. Like I take classes around the city, pottery, and he'll watch Violet for 2 hours, or I go to, an exercise class, or I go for a long bike ride. So those are things too, where I'm like so appreciative that I'm able to do something for myself without Violet, without him, because I very much value my alone time and he knows that. So as much as he wants to spend time together all the time, but he knows that I don't and I need my alone time and he gives me that.
You recently celebrated Violet's birthday. And of course, like, you're reflecting on your time just with Violet growing so fast. But also, what ways have you changed? Maybe the way you've seen yourself, or did you have a reflective moment of your own?
The day of a birthday, and this is pretty common with other moms, is you get very emotional because I think you realize the passage of time and you're like, wow, it's been an entire year. Like, what happened? But I feel like I am definitely the best version of myself. The fact that I do take a breath and intentionally want to be better for my child is so good. It really is ineffable. And I was always moving fast before I had her. And now there are days where I may move fast and I'm just thinking about a million things. You have so many chores, you have stuff on your mind, you're worried about daycare, you're worried about poopy diaper, all this stuff. You're moving so fast. But there are moments like yesterday, we were at the playground And I did not have my phone out. I just was like watching Violet just grabbing grass, grabbing weeds, and just staring at them. And like I just started to get emotional because I was like, can we just pause for a minute and just sit and watch and be comfortable with like not doing anything? Like it was boring. I will admit it. Like you have a lot of boring moments too as a parent. Like you're just staying with your kid and they're just like pulling grass. And I found it so special. And I never used to take moments like that before where I just sit and say, can you just savor this moment? Can we just be bored for a second? Can we not have our phones out? And I do that every day now where I take moments where I'm like, I don't have my phone out in front of her all the time. And you think more and more about how you are behaving and acting and what you're demonstrating because they watch, they observe you, very closely. So I have improved. I have been more mindful and more grateful every day. And I can feel a difference. I see pictures of myself now when I'm holding her. I look different. Like I'm smiling more. And I've had people comment and say, motherhood looks good on you. And I'm like, yeah, I think I look different. Maybe I'm happy or happier. And it shows.
When you think about these moments, what are the predominant emotions that you're feeling in your body?
There is a warmth. I feel like this warm glowing in my heart, my chest, and in my abdomen. I feel tingly sometimes in like a good way, like after a good run or bike ride or something. And then sometimes I feel so heavy with gratitude, and then all of it just wants to just drop and melt to the floor because I'm like overwhelmed with like the emotion of life and giving life and experiencing it together and thinking about growing old one day and she's going to be an adult and take care of me, like you just like, oh, like the weight of it, That's the best way I can kind of describe it. There's so many things going on.
Yeah, I'm just soaking all of that in. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes, you've been so amazing chatting with us and really sharing so many parts of this experience.
And thank you for this opportunity. I hope it's helpful for people. Yeah. There's some things that like I've been wanting to say out loud too, or I haven't said out loud enough. So it's great to have this platform.
Thanks for joining us. My First Year as a Mother is an original Sophia Media production created by Sophia. This episode was produced by senior producers Gabby Watts and Samir Tazari and co-hosted by Sophia and me, Samira. Check out our website at sophiamedia.co/myfirstyear for more episodes and other shows in the My First Year series, and for social links to join our online community.